right, here we are. All right. Welcome to everyone. We're going to wait a couple of minutes until 3. We're going to try to get started straight at 3. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I've muted everybody, so just so otherwise there's a lot of chaos when people get on and it's really loud.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. So I'm just going to have everybody be mute for the time being. I guess actually we could you can unmute yourselves until we get started. Sarah is having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to give her a minute to get on also. Hi, Laurel. Is everyone familiar with how Zoom works? Oh, Sarah, you're here. Excellent.
And I see my shifter. I'm giving a special shout out to my shifter.
So if everyone is familiar with how Zoom works, great. There's a, uh-oh, did I mute myself? Okay. There is, can everybody hear me? I can't see everybody. So if you have your video on, can you just give me a sign that you can hear me and it's good? All right, great. So we're going to get started right on time. I'm Rachel Barbanel-Fried, and I'm here today with Sarah Sarkis to offer this meeting on the psychology of uncertainty. We are really, really happy to be here and to have all of you with us. Some of you I know, some of you Sarah knows. But even if we don't know you, we're really happy that you're here. And we're hoping that we can offer some tools, tips, and tolerance to help you through these unusual times. Sarah and I met when we were in graduate school, getting our doctorates in clinical psychology. And it was during that time that we experienced 9/11. And we were students at that point. So although we wanted to be of service during that time, we weren't really able to be on the front line, so to speak. And fast forward to today's situation in my office, and when I'm talking with people, I hear a lot of people talking about comparing this to 9/11 and comparing this to wartime. And so Sarah and I decided together to offer this series as a way of giving back. We've been working in the field of clinical psychology for 2 decades, and we're really honored and pleased to be able to provide whatever help we can in this like unreal moment of history. I want to start actually today by just taking a few minutes to arrive together. So we're going to just take a few minutes, like 1 or 2 minutes, just to breathe. So you can either close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open, whatever you're most comfortable with. But just take a few minutes and concentrate on your breath. Bring your attention to your breath. You can do that quite easily by counting the inhalation and the exhalation. And 2 alternatives that I'll give you is, one is to make the inhalation and the exhalation match. That's the easiest thing for lots of people. So if you inhale to the count of 3, then you exhale to the count of 3. Do that a few times. Inhale and exhale. Take a moment to check in with your body to see if your shoulders can drop away from your ears, if you're holding tension in your neck. And come back to your breath. So the reason why I'm starting today, you can open your eyes if they're closed and join us again. The reason why I'm starting today with the breathing is because it's physiologically impossible for us to be both nervous, anxious, and calm at the same time. And if you take the time to check in with your breath is your easiest way to connect with your nervous system. And the exhalation is actually the part of our nervous system that helps us to calm down. So making sure, because when we're nervous, actually what happens when you're anxious or you're nervous, you automatically start breathing really shallowly and really quickly as a way of trying to prepare your body for battle or to run. And what we're trying to do right now is to actually calm our nervous systems. So it's a really simple thing you can do. You can do it in a meeting, you can do it on Zoom, you can do it when you're walking down the street, you can do it at any time of the day, as many times of the day as you need. There are no negative side effects to it. It's totally free and it's completely in your control, right? It's your opportunity to make a choice to calm your nervous system, right? So that's one tool you now have. Maybe you had it before, but it's one practice that you have that you can take with you into your day. A couple of things to keep in mind today. I've muted everyone as you come in because this has been my, I've done these Zoom meetings before and it's just like really chaotic and you hear a lot of feedback and you hear a lot of reverb, but we really want people to be involved and ask questions and make comments. So please feel free to introduce yourself either through the chat or to unmute yourself. You have that opportunity to unmute yourself. You can raise your hand through Zoom if you want rather ask a question that way. You can make your comment out loud or you can make it in the comment section written. But we really, really don't want this just to be like something that I'm, standing here and lecturing at you. I really want people to interact with us. Also, just to be really clear, this is not therapy. We want to be really clear about the boundaries for that. If we feel that there's some question that's getting too personal or too specific, we may ask you to save that question for the end, and maybe we can answer it offline. This is a place to connect and to seek support. What both of us have been hearing from people again and again, whether it's, in our practices or just in our lives, talking with our friends and our families, that everybody feels really disconnected. Whether you're living alone, whether you're living with a cat or a dog, whether you're living with a family, people feel alone. And that's actually what we're also hearing from the mental health professionals that are in the Asian countries like Singapore, where people have been in isolation for some time, that the disconnection is really hard to manage. So we want people to feel connected. Feeling alone is not good for anyone. We are pack animals, right? We know that when babies, infants who are deprived of touch, they die. So we're here to try to create a sense of community, to create a space for people to turn towards each other and try to create a space where we feel connected rather than alone. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said so far? I see that there's a question from Emmett. How can we realign or scale our goals and actions, giving this unmooring? We're going to get to that, I hope, today. Okay,
if not, that's our next topic, Emmett. First of all, Emmett and I go back to literally when we were like teens at Georgetown. So hi, and we share the same birthday. So that's a great question, because we're going to dedicate.
No, you were born in Boston.
That's right, Boston. Exactly. But we're going to, hopefully we can get to that today. And we're also really flexible. Like if this sort of, we kind of have enough structure to fill the hour with useful content, but we're also going to be really flexible to see where the questions go. But there will be an entire, what we're calling these house calls, and then each one will have a different title. There'll be an entire house call just on this question, including like, how do we maintain a sense of leadership now that our organizational structures have changed, just in terms of like where you're working from? How do we motivate people? How do we motivate ourselves? We're gonna for sure get to that. It may not be today, so we're gonna rope you into another one, Emmett.
Any other questions or comments or things people? Nope. All right, so Sarah, you want to talk for a little bit?
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. I can see lots of names that I know and lots of names that I'm going to recruit to use some talents I know they have that we'll talk about today. So as Rachel said, this is our attempt to try to use this unique set of skills that we've honed, and this art that we've honed over the decades, and really provide people with a sense of space and community, because we don't want isolation to lead to disconnection, and we don't believe that it has to. And so when we thought about today, one of the things that we thought would be really useful to start with is just a primer on fear, because most of us are feeling very vulnerable, afraid, fearful, and everything seems uncertain. And so it's not just our own physical wellness that seems uncertain. We're worried about people that we love. We're worried about our businesses. We're worried about the people we work with. And it sort of ripples out from there. So again, any questions, chime in, either write them here on this message board or unmute yourself and just sort of speak up. But we're going to start with fear. One of the overarching messages we want to give is that fear is actually not our enemy. It is actually one of our best evolutionary allies. And when we can sort of get it contained enough, or self-regulated is the word. That's why Rachel opened with breath. It's why we're going to suggest a few things at the very end for you to also do on your own on a daily basis, is that if you can self-regulate the very natural and healthy experience of fear, it can actually be a steer and a guide. It can make your decision making more precise. It can make you think more clearly about what your priorities are and make really safe and healthy choices for yourself and globally. I think what this experience is showing us is how connected and interconnected we all really, really are. And that's pretty staggering when you look at the world map of how interconnected we actually are, and that this is going to take a world effort to bring this back into balance and check. So don't fear your fear is my overarching message of this sort of segment. And what do I mean by that? Well, I was writing a thing on fear. I have a blog, and there's a bunch of things on fear there. You can always tell what a shrink is dealing with in their own life by what they write about. And there's lots of topics on fear in there. So I was writing this article a few months ago, and I happened to get in the car, and I had a decently long drive given that I live on a tiny island. And I turned on NPR, and there was this fascinating case that they were doing about this woman who had a very particular type of neurodegenerative illness where she developed calcifications on the part of the brain where fear originates, and she therefore had no capacity to feel fear at all. Do we have a question? Oh,
Laurel,
no?
do you have a question?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I mean to mute. No,
Okay.
No worries. At least you know we're listening. Okay, so calcifications in the area where fear is experienced in the amygdala and sort of other cascading regions. It's really that it originates in the amygdala, and then fear sort of sends out this network of signals. And as a result, she actually was in critical danger constantly. She was in danger physically. She had no capacity to regulate how she should be protecting herself, and she was dangerous psychologically. In fact, what they found was that they had to essentially obscure her identity to do the interview because people would exploit her psychologically because she didn't have those signals anymore. So what I would really love for people to start to do or continue to do, if you're sort of already on this path, is make sure that you are not pathologizing your fear. Fear is preventative. Panic is expensive. Panic takes a tremendous amount of cognitive load from us, and neurochemically, it takes a lot from us. Fear, in these sort of dosed, and most of the skills, most of the very detailed tactical, because we really want to balance. We want to give you space to communicate. We want to also give you an overview, but we also want you to leave with incredibly detailed tools and strategies to mitigate fear and sort of keep it from getting on those border towns where we can start to feel really, really out of control. And for a lot of us, fears of kind of contamination, which is really what viruses bring up for us. It makes us feel existentially vulnerable, and the ones we love, for fear that our body is permeable. And people that have struggled with hypochondriasis are particularly vulnerable in times like this. So the strategies we're going to give you are to help you be able to use fear as a steer and a guide. Like I said, panic is very, very expensive. And Rachel's going to do a whole entire section on recovery. And when we're in panic, she's going to suggest we double down on recovery. If you're in panic, you've got to, you've got to triple down on it, because it is such an expensive exchange in your neurochemistry there. Does anybody have any questions so far? None? Okay.
Yes, there's a question. Hold on.
I
there's
see
a
it.
question.
I've been struggling with severe anxiety and can't really tell the difference between the feeling of fear and anxiety. They kind of feel the same. Okay, so first of all, totally feel you. And I think by the end of today, and after 2 days of implementing pretty much exactly what we tell you to do, I think you're going to start to find that distinction. We can go ahead.
I think one way that we can differentiate between fear and anxiety also is anxiety is fear that's like constant every day, where you're sort of like on that on the hamster wheel, right? So fear is natural, right? Where we have this response because we're being chased by a tiger. But the fact is that, the news or checking your email or whatever it is, isn't actually dangerous to you in the same way, but physiologically it feels the same. And so anxiety, the way that I'm differentiating is like fear is the initial feeling and anxiety is that thing that keeps us going and feeling revved up all the time. It's like the ongoing fear that doesn't follow this sort of natural arc of like being scared and then being calm. If you're anxious, you're kind of like up here all the time in that very scared place for a long period of time.
And I want to add to that because that's critical. What Rachel's saying is 100% right. Here's what I'll add to it, and I also see the next question coming in, and I'll clarify that, and Rachel, you chime in too. What I'd say to that is, when Rachel's talking about anxiety sort of being, it can be low, mild, or moderate levels, but the engine is running constantly. If you think about it as, imagine if you never shut down an app on your telephone, how much battery you would have left by the end of the day, practically none. That's why you've got to triple down on your recovery. That's plugging the device in. And you also have to close all those apps out. And when I think about a battery running, because I sort of lean very scientific. It's one of my defense mechanisms, in all honesty. We're talking about burnout. We're talking about adrenal fatigue and really kind of the long-term effects, as we know, about stress and anxiety. It's one of the #1 killers because it wears us down at an immune level. It wears us down at cardiovascular level. I mean, there's just so much information now.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of like hard science out there that to answer this question about what it means to be expensive. Is that if you are if you're anxious and fearful for a long period of time, over time, it wears on us. We know that people who are feeling fearful and anxious, they have, as Sarah was saying, like they have a lowered immune response. We know that people who feel anxious or fearful can't, your brain actually doesn't function well, in part because there is neuronal loss. Your neurons start shutting down. We want to help you feel calm and collected so that you can create and generate new neurons. You can create new white matter so that you're functioning at a much higher level. So that's what we mean when we say expensive.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, and I know I'm getting feedback that my headset is spotty. So does that continue to be the case for people? No? Okay, well, if it does, I'll turn me off of video, which, as Rachel and people that know me know, I'm oh so happy to do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
What I find with my clients, instead of dealing with the anxiety, they're choosing to be in denial. That they won't face on the fear or anxiety, and they'll just be completely in denial about the situation. Do I steer them towards their anxiety or let them be in their denial?
That's a great question. I like this clinical question. You're in the profession as well.
Correct.
Okay, love it. Welcome. You're just as valuable here as you are participating. That's a great question. Let me think about that for a minute. I probably would.
I would say I wouldn't steer anybody towards anxiety. If they are feeling defended for whatever reason, and when by defended, we mean like not letting the feelings in, like when somebody says, how you doing? And you can see they're really upset and they're like, oh, I'm just fine. So I wouldn't push on that, but I would probably say something to the effect of like, well, you know, if it comes up that you're feeling differently in the future, I'm happy to talk about that. But there's a reason why people are using their defenses, particularly now, and it's to keep us feeling like we're together because everything feels like it's coming apart. So that's like my general answer that I would say in terms of like.
And I would probably second that, although my style might be slightly more kind of, at least I might address it in that I may note that it is interesting that there is the absence of any discussion about the biggest thing that's happening in the world, probably in our generation, right? I may try to start to just observe their defense mechanisms without necessarily trying to disrupt them. And I would maybe even emphasize and share with them, like, I understand that you are probably using that style for a reason. And maybe we could maybe you can get to the scared and the feeling behind the defense mechanism, and that may give you a window in. It's a great question. It also makes me think that maybe us shrinks need to rally together and do some more of this talking about this kind of stuff in the background. But I do want to say one thing about what Rachel said about the panic being expensive. What I really would want people to think about is that your feelings and your emotions, they are distinct. Emotions are inborn. There's a set number of them. Feelings are endless. They usually come after a period of reflection, and they're usually developmental. So they have a developmental age. So your feelings and your emotions, they are emotionally and they are morally and morally and ethically neutral. And usually the thoughts that we attach to them that sort of can get us into these cycles. And what I would want everybody to realize is that the feelings that you feel, they have a neurochemical footprint. And that neurochemical footprint that we psychologists talk about is called neurotransmitters. We talk about them in terms of serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. When I talked about burnout, I'm talking about cortisol and adrenaline. Panic is, from a cost-benefit analysis, it's one of the most expensive feelings that takes over our body because it's tremendous amounts of dopamine, adrenaline, cortisol, and most importantly, norepinephrine. Those are bold and provocative neurotransmitters. They are designed to disrupt us and get our attention. So when your brain is flooded with, it's an incredibly expensive energy exchange. It can also be life-saving sometimes, but usually we don't have to get to panic. Usually, if we do, they're sort of they are not complicated, but they are not easy. Practices every single day, we can start to self-regulate within our own temperament and within our own sort of styles of operating in the world. And one of the other reasons that we want to highlight fear is that these kinds of experiences where everything that used to structure our sense of self, our sense of self-worth, identity, how we went about in the world, how we stayed connected to people, all of that has changed in this very condensed period of time. And we feel very vulnerable when that happens because we are sort of left to rattle around in our own cages, the cages up here. So it behooves us to be aware of that and to just acknowledge, start to become attuned to where you hold your fear in your body, And I don't mean that like woo-woo. I mean, literally, it's in your body. And what it does to your mind and your thinking when you feel really afraid. And you're also I notice that I have very set patterns when I feel fear. And those, when we are really in the state that a lot of us are experiencing right now, we're very vulnerable to those unconscious patterns. And those unconscious patterns can be, they can be counterproductive. Go ahead, Rach.
So I see that there's another question about, there's a couple more questions coming in, and I think that we should go on to our next kind of move down what we want to talk about, because I think some of those questions will get answered if we kind of keep going on with.
Love it. Do it.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to say one more thing about that. So a long time ago, I'll keep this short and sweet. A long time ago, I watched an Oprah Winfrey where this neuroscientist had a stroke. And she had a stroke in the region of the brain that essentially sort of obliterated her ability to quote unquote think straight. And what she was left with was an enormous sense of perceptual awareness and interpersonal awareness. And she said that she hung on the door of her hospital room a sign that said, "You are responsible for the energy you bring to this space." And the reason that phrase keeps ringing in my head over and over during this time is because we all can see the stock market as an example, the empty shelves in the grocery store, of which I'm guilty of both, is an example of a collective expression of fear. And fear is contagious, but so is calm. Self-regulation is also contagious. It's why when mothers and fathers and caregivers are with infants, their own self-regulatory process is the key to helping a child self-regulate. The same thing happens in adulthood. So that's my last little piece on fear.
So I am going to talk a little bit. What I've been hearing also about is how do we manage ourselves in this time? This is going to maybe answer a little bit of your question from earlier, Emmett. People are saying, I feel really distracted, right? And this is one of the things that happens with fear or panic, anxiety or depression. Basically, anytime that we're not feeling our best is that our minds tend to get stuck in a loop, right? Is anybody experiencing that? Can you raise your hand if you're having a hard time concentrating, a hard time getting things done? You think you're going to be productive and then something sort of slips. Well, I'm here to tell you that that rabbit hole of rumination is normal. Okay? It's not a problem that you have because there's something wrong with you. Right? It's a problem because your mind is trying to keep you safe, right? It's keeping us on high alert. We're constantly scanning for danger, right? That's why we keep going back to the news feed. That's why we keep going back to listening to whatever radio news show you're listening to that you've heard already 3 times today, right? But it is not a way, so it works to kind of scan the horizon for danger, but it doesn't work to keep us calm or centered or able to operate on a daily basis, right? So some ideas that I've either heard from people or we've been talking about with people, you have to microdose your news intake. And what I mean by that is 15 minutes in the morning and maybe 15 minutes in the evening. The news is going to come at you, right? It's coming at you anyway. You're going to find out what you need to find out. Just scanning constantly is not going to help you. It's not going to help you feel any better, and it's not going to help you actually take in any more information. And limit the news to direct scientific sources or highly reputable folks that are known for being judicious, not people who are known for being inflammatory. Right?
Can I add to that?
Yes, and just let me finish. They're not trying to help keep you calm. right? If it bleeds, it leads, right? That is what they say in the newsroom, right? So the news is not there to keep you calm. It's there to suck you in, right? So you have to figure out how much news you can take in. Sarah, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. And in this day and age, this is only a personal preference, but in this day and age, we'll answer Yunji. She's my friend. Yes, it will be if she's still on. Okay, so in this day and age, you may have better success finding your favorite podcasts or scientific podcasts where, I mean, leading experts are on with other leading experts doing really, really non-commentary based discussions, from everything that's really practical to like geeking out on the deep understandings of this virus's inner workings. So, you know, if people want to contact us privately just for opinions on like different podcasts that have been usul, we're happy.
We can post them on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
Exactly.
So that's
exactly.
So I want to, I saw that there was another question from Dina, and I think some of the things we're going to talk about now are going to help you. So just if they don't, if you still have other questions, you can ask later down. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to say, and if you have spent any time talking to me, whether personally or professionally in the last, 10 years, I will tell you, bang for buck, the best thing you can do to calm your nervous system is meditate. So any of us who are stuck indoors right now have no excuse but to create the time to meditate. There are tons of free meditation apps out there. My personal favorite right now is Sam Harris's Waking Up, and he sent an email to everyone a couple weeks ago saying if there's any issue with payment, you can email him directly and he will allow you access for free. There are tons of things on YouTube. There are tons of things that you can do to learn how to meditate. So if
Peter Attia is interviewing Sam Harris today on his podcast, so that you would get to kill two birds with one stone on my top favorite list.
So another thing that you can do in terms of calming yourself is journaling. Again, if you've worked with me or if you've talked to me personally, I will tell you my favorite way to think about this is you spend 5 minutes, you start with the prompt, today I feel, and then you just write, and you're not editing yourself. You're not explaining, you're not saying, oh, I was on a Zoom meeting today with these two people that, blah, 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 and this is how I got there. You're just writing, not to look at it again, not to give any detail, just to get it up and out and on the paper. Okay. And lastly, there are other things we can do and we'll talk about some of them, but the other thing that I'm going to talk about right now is to actually create 45-minute block of time or 45-minute blocks of time where you can attend to something meaningful. So no tech distractions. Turn off your phone or put it in the other room so you can't hear it bing.
I say put it in the other room. The world will not fall apart. Probably everybody you give a shit about is in your house.
So the world will not fall apart. You are not that important. Even if you're a healthcare worker or a first responder, you can find 45 minutes in a day to put your phone away.
Actually, I'm glad you used that word, Rachel, because before you used a different word, and the two are really important. Sometimes I listen to people when I'm talking about mindfulness and I'm working with people and they'll say, oh, I can't find the time. I'm like, it's not lost. You're not finding it. Start using the word create. Oh, I see Carly. I have to say hello to Carly. So create the time. it's an action verb for a reason. So start to really change those micro shifts are where the battle is won and lost in terms of habit formation. Now, anybody that's ever worked with me is like slash laughing and rolling their eyes. So create the time. It is an action verb. I'm done.
Well, I think you're going to talk about the devil in the details.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Any questions about that?
Yeah.
I see there's a bunch of discussion in the chat, which is great.
Yeah,
Yoga
Morgan,
Nidra
I'm getting
great.
to you. I'm about to put you to work.
Insight Timer is great. There's a lot of great apps out there. Ideas for what the something meaningful is if you live alone. That's a good question.
Tell me the context again.
There was a question about ideas for something meaningful if you live alone. I mean, that's going to be really personal, right? So I love to knit.
I like doing puzzles.
Right. So Sarah's been doing a lot of puzzles. For me, knitting is good. You know, reading a book that brings you joy, turning music on and dancing. I don't really care what it is that you do, whether you have to like actually get work done is okay too. Like, but you have to figure out what that means for you. Cooking.
Connect.
Yeah.
You know, connect with people on Zoom. Really, really, really connect. We're going to get to Yoga Nidra, everybody. You're all on the right path here.
And there's one other question about how many from Rachel Silk. Hi, Rachel. How many 45-minute blocks do you suggest? So if you're having a really hard time focusing and you're really distracted and you're really overwhelmed, start with one 45-minute block.
Yeah.
Right? Our brains were kind of built to sort of max out at 45 minutes worth of attention. So if you find that 45 minutes is good, stop at 45 minutes and then maybe set up to do a second 45-minute block of time, you know, later in the day. And hopefully over time, you can train yourself to stack 45-minute sections of time, one after the other, so that you can feel like you're doing something that is meaningful. But one of the things that's really important is to really make sure that you stop at 45 minutes, especially if you're feeling good and engaged in what you're doing, because that's going to prime your brain, the neurobiology, to be able to like remember that, oh, I felt good and I want to come back to that later. Does that
It's called the recency and the latency effect. It's really important. It's why when you go to a meeting, you remember the first thing somebody says and the last thing somebody says. Anybody I've ever worked with, at some point, I reveal to them that I write down every word that I always remember the first word they open an appointment with and the last one that they close with. And I always make sure the last thing I say is important. I'm often saying in summary, because that's the last thing you're going to remember from me, and everything else is going to fade to black. So also remember what you feel. It's a neurochemical footprint. This is not magic. And the reason Rachel's telling you to get up is because she's basically saying, leave on dopamine. Who's interviewing Sam Harris today? Peter Attia, A-T-T-I-A. Fabulous, fabulous guy, scientist and doctor, doing great, but on the virus. His podcast is called The Drive.
So, Sarah, we have 20 minutes and we have a bunch of stuff we want to get through. So I just want to make sure we make sure to get through it.
We'll get through it, I promise.
I love the dinosaur in the back.
Oh, because I'm in my son's room, by the way. Welcome to my life. Okay. So we want you to leave on the dopamine. It's it feels good. And we're going to end this hour talking about oxytocin. That's where you're coming in to play, Morgan, even though you don't know it yet. Okay. So the next thing we want to talk about is this kind of concept of like the devil dwells in the details. Never is that more true than right now. Your brain, and I'm going to try to explain, I have sort of two big concepts that I want to talk about here, and they're very tactical, and I want to give you a little bit of the neurobiological reasoning for it. Okay, so the devil dwells in the details. You got to win your morning. And when I say win the morning, I want to talk directly to any of the perfectionists out there. In this kind of game of humanity, so not just the coronavirus, this is just the platform through which I'm going to suggest this. We live in the laws of baseball. In baseball, if you make contact with the ball 30% of the time, you are a top hitter. So when I say you got to win the morning, I mean 30% of the time, that's great. The other 70% of the time, you are practicing. And practice is a code word for you are failing. And you just keep practicing it. So the growth happens in the practice, and we feel good when we win the morning. But don't get caught up in I did good and I did bad. Good is just another cage. Just do. So win the morning, first 30 minutes of the day. Now, why do I say that? The brain is a point and click mechanism. While it's a brilliant and complex machine, it has some elements to it, or it's a brilliant and complex system. It has some elements to it that are fundamental and elementary. And one of the things that, this is why things like The Secret and manifesting work, is that the brain lands where you point it. So you have got to set, in times like this, it's critical that we set our emotional and self-regulatory and psychological thermostat from the moment we wake up. It's point and click. Now, I want to back up one click and say the preparation for the morning time happens at nighttime. I'm going to suggest that everybody, when you go to bed tonight, about an hour before you're going to go to bed, before you're just totally fried and you can't think straight, I want you to write down a list. I want your list to be incredibly detailed. Every single thing you need to do tomorrow morning, and preferably the times that you're going to do it. Just so you know, I'm also a client. These are my lists. So they're very detailed. It's so that when I wake up, this follows the principle of cognitive load and cognitive ease. Everything is an energy exchange. If you have too much demand on your brain when you wake up, you're now thinking kids, lunch, work, what else do I need to do? When am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? You are already behind the 8 ball. Make the list the night before. If anybody wants super detailed information on that, Rachel and myself are Olympic list makers. Feel free to contact us. You can contact us on Instagram, anywhere you want. Everybody knows where to find us now. Cat's out of the bag. Okay, so you wake up, no phone. Don't touch your phone for a minimum of 30 minutes. You can get out of bed, or you can do this in bed. 30 to 45 minutes of the morning, you're going to take this time and you're going to create a ritual. I'm going to tell you my ritual. Ritual is an adult swaddle. Let's be serious. And we all need an adult swaddle right now. It's very containing. So these are the ways that adults can do it. I said that you're going to make the detailed list. Don't touch any tech. Okay, these are super easy things. Again, not complicated. If you're interested in this, his name is Andrew Huberman, and he's out of Stanford University. He's on Instagram. He's got a ton of free information, and I think he has a YouTube channel. I'm not going to get into all the science of it, but the science is robust. Get outside for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning at sunrise. You don't have to stare at the sun.
Never stare at the sun.
Of course. But that's from a mother that is still instructing small children. But get outside, get it in through your eyelids. Sunrise, it's about the very particular rays. They are different. Sunrise rays versus sunset rays. I do sunrise therapy. I'm calling it sunrise therapy. A lot of my patients and clients now know this whole spiel from me. And sunset, same amount of time at nighttime. It has a significant impact on mood, specifically anxiety. And it's free and it's renewable and it just feels good. It's a cheap fuel source to almost hack into our neurobiological tendencies to want to feel good. So use it. If you're interested in all the science, go see Andrew Huberman. He's fabulous, and his dog Costello is arguably even more fabulous than he is. I would say that's how I start my day. Those two, the sunrise therapy, while I'm there, I do some practice of breathing. I like box breathing, do anything that's in your jive. If you have no practice of breathing, you can Google down regulation breathing techniques, and you're going to find on YouTube 65,000 hits on different ways to do it. Brian McKenzie is probably one of my favorite breath guys right now. Wide array of breaths. He's also on Instagram, has a YouTube channel. And then there's people in this community right here who do lots of great breath work that you can, amongst each other, you can try to learn a practice. If worse comes to worse, don't do any particular practice. Just lay there and be present in your body. And you can do stacking. I stack together the morning sunrise therapy with my breath work. I do box breathing, and you can Google that. Okay, then follow that with some form of mindfulness or meditation. Why am I making the distinction? Meditation is, there's different types of meditation. Mindfulness is being present in any way, shape, or form, including you can do yoga asanas, you can do sun salutations, you can do a walking meditation. Jack Kornfield is famous for having a great style of a walking meditation, do 10 minutes. So now we're sort of at a 30-minute mark, 20, 30 minutes. You have now calibrated your central nervous system in a way that gives you a fighting chance. I use fighting chance for all you perfectionists out there, because some days you're not going to knock it out of the park, and that's okay. Just accept that. And then don't give up on the practice. I mean, like babies didn't give up on trying to walk, right? We all got upright. Just keep showing up. And during the mindfulness, I try to set an emotional intention. I'm going to give you 2 examples of my emotional intentions. Find your own, whatever works for you. I usually will use some version of today I will trust my feelings, or today I will listen to what my body needs. But you do whatever works for you. I would be super mindful when you're setting the intention that you're not setting up an incognito way that you can then judge yourself if you don't quote succeed. We are not setting the intention to beat the shit out of ourselves later if we don't hit the grand slam. We're just setting the intention to try to leverage the fact that neurobiologically we are a point and click machine. And we want to leverage the upside of that. It's not always going to work. Then this is just a personal preference. I drink a glass of water, and that's when I start my day. I close it out with a full glass of water, and I start my day. 30 minutes. You'll be amazed and notice, please observe how different you feel. Okay, so second, I want to talk a little bit about why we create those very detailed lists. I spoke about it briefly, but this notion of the cognitive load versus cognitive ease. In times like this, you want to try as hard as possible within healthy ranges to offset as much cognitive load as you can. It's why you hear lots of well-known people. Steve Jobs was really well known for this, for dressing in all one color or one outfit, you know, the black turtleneck with the blue jeans. It's for decision fatigue. That's a very particular type of cognitive load, and he is trying to release that cognitive load and get cognitive ease by not having to figure out what he wears. We got to do these little micro decisions times like this all day long. Look for opportunities to create more cognitive ease for yourself. Once you turn your attention to it, there are more opportunities than we think to actually do it. And then the last thing I want to say before we see if there's any more questions and sort of close down. And I see some people are already chiming in here with Morgan. And I also want to say the same person, Andrew Huberman, he has some stuff on this as well, but Morgan is really trained in this. So what we want to try to do in this period of time, we've talked about everything leaves a neurochemical footprint. When we get off the phone today, I hope all of you feel a little better. I do already, just seeing everybody. That's oxytocin. That's the neurochemical doing it. That's why when I noticed people I know personally from my private life, I acknowledged them. It's a hit of oxytocin. And there's a couple of ways that we can hack into our brain's oxytocin supply. Oxytocin gives us the message, you are safe and you belong. And those are things that we need right now. Yoga Nidra is a really good way to get a hit of oxytocin and calm the central nervous system. So are metta meditations. Both things, there are people in our community, I've referenced Morgan, I also have referenced Andrew Huberman, who have resources around one or both of these. Additionally, YouTube has tons of them. Pema Chodron has a great one on YouTube. It's 45 minutes. It's a big commitment, but you can create that time. Create, not find. Also, Tara Brock has a great 13-minute one right on her website, a meditation. So those are some resources. They are ways to hack in to the neurochemical inside of our brain, oxytocin. And isolation strips us of it. That's why we really want to stay connected.
And so,
and watch comedy.
So the last thing that I want to say, which I don't really have time to get into in great detail, is this idea of doubling down on your self-care. So whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself, you have to double that now. So I think about like sleep. You got to make sure your sleep is on point. Movement, even if we're stuck inside, right? You can still move. You can find something on YouTube or some lead class. You can walk up. I literally talked to somebody yesterday who was walking up and down the hallway in his apartment to get to his 10,000 steps, right? He put on a headset and he was listening to something that he enjoyed, and he just was walking back and forth in his apartment. So movement, sleep, hydration is really important, because all of the cues that we have normally, like everybody who knows me in my office knows that I come with like a whole army of water bottles that I drink throughout the day. And it's taken me a couple of days to kind of understand that I actually have to still set up my water bottles for the day so that I keep going back to them. Because otherwise it's really easy for us to get dehydrated. And if we're dehydrated, we feel anxious, right? Nourish yourself. I don't care I'm not going to talk about like, nutrition specifically, but really eat in a way that takes care of yourself. That's really trying to nourish yourself. And the last thing is to connect. So that's what we've been trying to do here today, whether it's talking to people on the phone, whether it's Zoom meetings with people, FaceTime meetings with people. Try to push yourself to connect with someone that you trust, that helps you feel good. My camp girlfriends and I have a chat on WhatsApp that is really helpful to me right now, because it's all women that I know are struggling through the same things, and we're just trying to figure out kind of how to manage this together. So whatever you can do, if you like to take baths, take more baths, right? You've got the time. You want to do a face mask? Fine. I don't care
I've done
what
all
it is.
of the above,
Right.
and I ordered a sauna bag on Amazon.
Right. I don't care what it is, but you have to do more of it right now to calm yourself so that you can be present and productive and centered while, it feels like everybody else is on fire. So we have, just a couple of minutes. There's a whole lot of stuff that's been going on the chat that I haven't really been
I
able
don't
to
have
pay
to hang
attention
up
to.
right at 9, so I can stay on a little longer if people want. If people have to jump, this is the first of, we're going to sort of try to continue semi-regularly, in my opinion, very regularly, to have this space for people throughout the duration of this experience that we are literally all in together.
Right. And our hope is that we will have a series of these conversations. We'll probably try to tailor each conversation slightly, so to sort of have a topic header for each of them. They will be at different times during the week or during the day, because different people have different schedules. And we will record them and post them on social media. So if you can't make it, you'll be able to watch it. So I think, if people need to leave, that's fine. I think we can give it maybe another 5-10 minutes, and then we should end. So do people have questions about that, or thoughts, or anything specific?
Hey, Rachel.
Okay. Yeah.
This is Rachel Selk.
Hi, Rachel Selk.
Hey.
Another thing you could do is sing. Rachel Selk has a gorgeous voice and shared with a bunch of our friends some song earlier. I don't know, was that yesterday? But, singing calms us, right? We sing to our babies. It actually has a neurobiological effect. So sing. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now
if you're good at it.
We're doing live Rachel and Steve sing you through quarantine, and it's been really great.
I love that.
But I love the doubling down on self-care, when self-care is so challenging normally, and now we got to double down on it. So I don't normally, like, my normal mental health issues don't involve anxiety. Mm-hmm. But given the situation, I have adult children, as you know, Rachel. I have adult children, young adult children, who are not with me. And so for me, there's a new challenge in feeling anxiety for others in an uncertain world, when I don't know how long they'll have to be there. And, the news is, is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? I might have to get in the car and drive cross country and get them at some point. So that's, if you could speak to a little bit of that, anxiety for others that you're not, like, that aren't in your house, that'd be helpful. I mean, I know it's not really any different than what you've said already, but
yeah, the core underlying principle there is the word uncertainty, and it's still a lot of times fear orbits around control. But I really can empathize. I have empathy for parents whose adult children are not under their thumb, and you don't get to say, wash your hands, sing the ABC song, wash your hands, all the things we do to make ourselves feel better. What I would say is, it's going to be what it's going to be. So yeah, you may end up driving across the country, it sounds, you may not, but the battle is sort of won and lost in it's like this balance between do what you can, connect as much as you can, Zoom with them. Rachel had a great thing. She obviously, she has young kids. they played a board game with another family, play cards with them on Zoom, do things to connect, and really try to tango with that uncertainty and, you know, rein that part of it in, and also be really gentle with yourself that probably in your mothering schema, you didn't think, well, when I face a pandemic as a mother of young adults, I'll do blah, blah, blah. So you're caught flat-footed like most of us are at the chapter that we're in. So be gentle, gentle, gentle with yourself as well. And your kids will tolerate if you call them 25 times a day.
And I think the biggest thing, you know, sort of to echo what Sarah was saying, is that it's anxiety because we don't have any control over it, right? And that's what anxiety is. It's this fear of lack of control over the future, and we don't. And so figure out what you can do to try to calm that feeling, to regulate your nervous system, and then to connect with them as best you can, because that's all we sort of have. That's all we have. And your kids are great. I agree. Somebody else posted a question about finding this recording. So Sarah and I will both post the recording either to our blogs or to Instagram or to Facebook. So it will be accessible for folks.
We'll put it up on Instagram. We have somebody behind the scenes. We share somebody behind the scenes who's the extraordinaire that makes everything look good. So she'll be on that. That will probably be released today or tomorrow, and likely you'll find a link that goes to where we can put it, which is probably on our blogs. But
right, it probably
will make it known.
It won't be today, probably, because I think Zoom takes a little bit of time to actually like create the recording.
To create the file.
Yeah, so it will probably be tomorrow or after that.
And we can actually have her send it out to the email list that has, for all of you have submitted an email to attend this, so thank you. And we'll, I'm going to write a note to have, would people want our person to send it out to the email list? You can just sort of nod. I'll see the faces that I'm looking at. Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right. Well, oh, do you have a question? Yeah.
Do you do any meditation with children?
I do every night with my son. I have for years. I just use a hybrid that's really simple. I actually take the principle of mantra because repetition is that's why mantras work. It's repetition. It also leverages that point and click. Whatever you are pointing your brain at is where you are going to land. I say this phrase over and over again, and I run them through a quick body scan. I say, quiet your mind and quiet your body and observe the relationship between the two. And I say that over and over and over again for by the way, 5 years, the poor thing. So I use that. I have a little one-page thing. I'm not like a meditation, I don't have a degree in meditation. I'm just doing what works. Morgan's putting in, she does yoga nidra. Yep. Really, I mean, everybody should try to check out a yoga nidra that Morgan specifies. I clearly have utilized her things. It's why I'm calling her out so frequently. But there is tons and tons of children apps, and including Sam Harris has a link to some resources for children's meditation on his app. So yeah, so good. Such a good question too.
And my children are not so into the idea of meditation. Every time I bring it to them, they're like, what are you talking about? But what we do actually is we do daily gratitude practice. And we sing the same kinds of songs every night. And we think, so it's like we have gratitude practice at dinner. We sing the same kinds of, songs at night where we're, sort of thinking about what the day brought us and how we're feeling. So I try to use that in terms of meditation. The other thing that I will share is that I take deep breaths a lot to try to calm myself.
Oh, this is such a good story.
So I do, you can't really see my hands, but I'll be like, to try to calm myself before I, yell at my children. And so now my children do that back at me when they are frustrated towards me. They will do the same thing. I don't know if it actually helps, but I'm hoping somewhere in there, there's some kind of something that's getting in. So you just got to keep trying. All right.
It's difficult. Yeah. Convincing others to try 100%. It's very difficult. And if you're married, it's maddening. I'll add commentary to that. That's just yet another example of surrender.
Right. But I also do think that, my kids now know that I'm meditating. Like I will say to them, because I used to do it before I got into my office. That was my best time because I would sit down, I would have some quiet and space, but now I don't have that. And so they know I am meditating now. And so I think, what we know is like kids watch us. And so that's a really, really great way for them to understand what it is that we take to be important.
The psychological word attached to what Rachel just said is called modeling. And we know that modeling rules the roost. Genetics are 10%. Their genetics load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. And that is true, especially in the field of psychology. It is modeling that is basically going to govern the young adult that emerges into the world with the habits and the self-regulatory patterns. And that's a beautiful and horrifying reality if you're living in my head. So, but model. All
right, let's take a couple more questions if there are. All right, if there are no more questions.
Okay, I love it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. We're so appreciative, and we will announce when we're doing our next one, and we hope that you guys are there again. And if you come up with lists or questions or whatever, shoot us emails or post on Instagram or whatever it is. We want to know what you guys are up to.
Let's stay connected.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.